Hello, my name is Mackenzie Brannon, and in this video, I'm applying the feminist standpoint theory developed by Sandra Harding and Julia T. Wood to comparing it to the documentary Beyond Standing Rock. The film explored centuries-long struggle between Sioux Nation and the U.S. government over land, sovereignty, and natural resources. By analyzing the conflict through the lens of standpoint theory, I'll compare two standpoints: the indigenous tribe standpoint and the U.S. government/corporate standpoint, to uncover central worldviews, power relations, and communication patterns product to what people believe as the truth. According to Harding and Wood, the social groups within which we are located powerfully shape and what we experience and know, as well as how we understand and communicate with others in the world. That was in Griffin, published in 2018, page 447. In other words, a standpoint is a social and cultural situated position that shapes how we interpret reality. And the feminist standpoint theory extends the idea by asserting the knowledge is achieved through a standpoint and embodied awareness shaped by power and position, and that was in Del Greco, published in 2021 on page 257. Importantly, Harding argues the perspective of subordinate groups are more complete and thus better than those of privileged groups, because marginalizing people must understand both their own and dominant perspectives to survive. This is a principle of epistemic advantage, the idea that marginalized standpoints can reveal social realities that dominate standpoints. Beyond Standing Rock centers on tribal sovereignty, meaning they inherit the right of indigenous nations to self-govern and protect their own ancestral lands. The film contracts indigenous relationships to the land, but through enculturation, or the process by which members learn their cultural traditions and values, the U.S. government's bureaucratic and industrial approach to land management. These different standpoints result in a process where intercultural interactions amplify divisions rather than create understanding. And the Sioux Nation standpoint reflects an encultured worldview rooted in spirituality and ecological and command responsibility. A tribal representative in the documentary states, "This land is who we are. Without it, we cease to exist as people," and I completely agree. This reflects what Harding calls logical knowledge suited in time, place, experience, and relative power, and that was found on page 452 of Griffin. From a communication standpoint, the tribal members employ complementary communication, emphasizing respect, relationships, and independence, rather than confrontation, and this standpoint embodies intersectionally as indigenous people navigate overlapping marginalizations of race, class, historical disposition, through critical consciousness. They transform their suffering into a collective voice for sovereignty. And that's an example of achieving a standpoint through reflection and resistance. The U.S. government and energy corporations, on the other hand, operate dominant cultural standpoint shaped by ethnocentrism, the belief that one's own values are the universal standard. A government spokesperson in the film asserts, "We're creating energy independence for America." The message encodes a capitalist ideology equating land with economic utility. However, indigenous audiences decode that differently, seeing it continually be a colonization, illustrating the encoding and decoding theory that was brought to you by Hall in 1980. The standpoint also reflects monochronic time orientation, emphasizing deadlines, linear progress, and profit-driven decision-making, which clashes with the polychronic and sense of time embedded in indigenous culture. U.S. policies, assimilation tried to absorb indigenous peoples into a dominant Western system, reinforcing the same power imbalance visible in the film. These standpoints illustrate what Harding would call the relationship between power and knowledge, that those at the top of the social hierarchy are the ones privileged to define what it means to be male, female, or anything in a given culture. That was found on page 451. From the U.S. government, the truth about our land is shaped by our ownership and development. For Sioux Nation, the truth is spiritual. In conclusion, standpoint theory helps us understand the communication in Beyond Standing Rock is not just about opinions, it's also about knowledge counts. The indigenous standpoint shaped by resistance offers epistemic strength and cultural insight that exposes the limits of a dominant U.S. ideologies.